Janet Kavanagh's life takes a dramatic turn after her husband's gambling addiction leaves them broke and stranded, until a chance discovery brings hope and renewal. The emotional journey of Janet Kavanagh. The Kavanagh family arrived at their new home, an old, eerie house surrounded by wildflowers and weeds. The bumpy and dusty road had left the kids exhausted, and Janet struggled to keep her composure without her medication. Despite the challenging circumstances, Janet held her head high, determined to make the best of their new adventure. But it wasn't supposed to be this way. Janet and Matthew's marriage had once been a perfect balance of love, hard work, and financial stability. Matthew was a highly ethical and prosperous businessman who could always find time to unwind with a beer or whiskey and spend time with Janet. They weren't rich, but they had an enviable income in their circle of friends and family. Their marriage had seemed stable, and they had 2 lovely children, Rick and Mila. However, everything began to unravel when Matthew's love for gambling turned into a dangerous addiction. He started placing larger and larger bets, even as the family's finances began to crumble. Janet tried to reason with him, but he refused to listen, insisting that he knew what he was doing. Years of financial ruin followed, and the once loving marriage between Janet and Matthew eventually fell apart. Now the Kavanagh's family was broke and stranded in the middle of nowhere, forced to start over in an old, eerie house. Matthew's downfall. Matthew's gambling addiction took a turn for the worse after he won a jackpot and decided to take his family on a vacation to Disney World. Janet, his wife, thought everything was fine, that he had everything under control and their finances were secure. Unfortunately, things spiraled out of control after that. Matthew's losses were so bad that he had to borrow money from his own business and sell his shares to his partner to pay off his debts. The family was left in dire straits, and a loan shark started calling them to collect. When Janet went to the grocery store, she found their credit cards blocked, and the bank manager told her that her husband had spent all their money and taken out loans, putting their home at risk of being sold to pay off the debt. Janet was stunned and couldn't believe how careless and self-centered her husband had been. The family's future was uncertain, and they didn't know how they were going to survive. Matthew's depression led him to seek solace in whiskey. He became increasingly unreliable and unpleasant, causing embarrassment at a birthday party hosted by his ex-partner. Janet was heartbroken and saw no other solution but to leave her husband. When the divorce papers finally arrived, Matthew pounced on them like a predator waiting for his prey. He scribbled his signature on them with no remorse, as if he was breaking free from a trap. How a chance discovery brought hope and renewal to Janet's life. Janet was left with no choice but to flee to her family's ancestral home with their children. There she contemplated how to mend her shattered life, and she had nothing but an old family house and a drained bank account that wouldn't last her but a few months. But her luck took a dramatic turn when she discovered a safe hidden behind a painting. She desperately searched for the key and eventually found it in an old mailbox, where her mother used to hide sweets. She rushed back to the safe and unlocked it, finding a treasure trove of valuable jewelry inside. But the most emotional discovery was a gold pendant with a picture of her as a baby and a message from her mother, calling her the most precious treasure. The pendant brought tears to Janet's eyes, and she hugged her children tightly, realizing the love that her mother had always had for them. Janet's life changed with this unexpected discovery. The jewels were valued at over $400,000, which meant she was no longer financially dependent on her ex-husband. Janet's broken spirit was rejuvenated, and she felt empowered to start anew. The old family house, which once seemed dark and daunting, now held precious memories of her mother's love and treasures that would help her move forward. The discovery not only brought financial stability, but also a renewed sense of hope and love that would guide her in the future. That's all for this video. Thanks for watching.